part of the reason why I wanted to have Tom on. He's been doing all kinds of incredible things over on Bloodsport and MLW. He has transitioned very nicely from the world of wrestling to, for a world of MMA to pro wrestling. But yesterday, he was at the courthouse when the Judge Bulware, Richard Bulware, approved a $375 million settlement between the UFC and its former athletes in the Lee versus Zuffa lawsuit. This is a historic day. In fact, he did a video right outside calling it a historic day for the UFC, for the fighters. And this is a legal battle that has gone on for about 10 years, remarkably. And it appears as though it is approaching an end. Of course, the fighters aren't getting paid just yet. There's all kinds of steps that need to happen, but the path is there. There is a light at the end of this tunnel. And so I thought it was great that Tom was there and that he provided us with that insight, and wanted to have him on the program. And so here he is, the filthy one, Mr. Tom Lawler, kind enough to join us right now. There he is. Hello, Tom. How are you? Long time no speak.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, Ariel, actually, I'd say. Thanks for having me on short notice. As you mentioned, I was one of the very few people that were inside the courthouse yesterday, maybe about 10 people besides the representatives from the plaintiffs and the defendants. There was one other fighter besides Kung Lee that was there along with myself. And then there was, Josh Gross, I believe, Rugged Fred Garvin, a few other reporters, but not a whole lot of people there to cover this. So I'm glad to give any insight that I can.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I thought it was great. By the way, could I ask who was the other fighter?
I'm actually not going to say who it was because he seemed quite like worried about being there.
Oh, really?
Put it that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Well, appreciate you being there and your insight. It's fascinating. Why did you want to be there? Why did you go out of your way to be there?
Well, I'm unemployed, number one, so
Okay.
I had the time. Number two is that I have been a lifelong fan of mixed martial arts. I remember watching UFC 2 when I was like 11 years old, and to be able to really grow up in the sport as it grew, this has been essentially what I've dedicated my life to. And this has been like a monumental case if people have followed it over the last 10 years. A lot of people did not think that there was any, skin to this case, that it wouldn't even reach this far. And, the fact that it has now become one of the biggest antitrust settlements in U.S. history, it's a testament to not only the work of the plaintiffs, the fighters, the lawyers, but also the work that the fighters themselves put in over the years to really make the UFC the number one co-leader in the sport.
Well done. I noticed that the co-leader mentioned. Can you let me know, you seem to have your finger on the pulse here, so let me know if my facts are correct. In the end, $375 million, although it doesn't end up being 375, because around 115 million of that will be deducted for lawyer fees and commissions, and it will eventually, roughly, this is the estimate because I think it's different for everyone, and I would love if you could possibly break this down for us, about 217,000 per fighter. Is that accurate? Are those numbers accurate?
That would be somewhat accurate, but also inaccurate.
Okay.
What I can tell you is that 375 million is what was agreed upon for this settlement. And this covers just the Kung Lee portion of Kung Lee and Johnson versus Zuffa. So the original court case has been split into two. So let's make that quite clear, that this covers the fighters from 2010 till 2017. And the fighters in the Johnson case, there's still the ability that there's some contractual changes there. So I've seen a lot of people being upset about the money number, and they need to realize that this is just one half of the lawsuit, and there's still a lot to come. Now, out of the 375 million that was agreed upon, as you mentioned, 115 million go to the lawyer fees. And from what I understand, that's about standard in a case like this. The lawyers on the plaintiff side have been putting in work for about 10 years. And I don't know how many people that exactly is. I don't know how many people are on staff at the law firms. But they've put in a considerable amount of work. I don't know if it's $115 million worth, but that's up for Judge Boulware to decide at the final settlement hearing. How they got that $115 million for the lawyers is it was explained that Kramer said it was 31% of the original $335 million settlement, 300 of which was going to go to the Kung Lee suit. So 31% of 300, and then now this extra 75 million that was added on over the past few weeks, the lawyers have taken 20% of that, and it came out to about 30.7% as it was described by Kramer. So that leaves 260,000, or I'm sorry, 260 million. Let me get that right.
Yeah.
260 million. That's a big difference. 260 million left for the fighters. I believe that is 1,214 or so fighters that are in the class. Now, there's going to be some fighters who have unfortunately passed away during that time. There's some fighters who, quite frankly, you can't get a hold of them. You're not going to be able to find them, and they're not going to claim the money. And there's still some fighters who actually don't even know that this lawsuit has been going on. You know, I've been contacted by multiple people so far, saying how skeptical they are that anything is going to go down with this lawsuit still. So, if we can get back to, you said 217,000 per fighter, I believe is what you estimated, or 271. There's a formula that they are using. It is not divided equally per fighter. So much like in the rest of the world, Ariel, the rich get rich. And in this case, I guess the poor are going to get a little something, but the rich get richer. The top level fighters who made the most money are going to get the most money from this settlement. I believe it's around $15,000 per fight per fighter. So if you had 2 fights in the UFC and you lost them both and then you were cut, well, you may be looking at, $30,000 coming your way. On top of that, 30%, I believe, of your estimated earnings over the course of time will be given to you. So, I mean, for someone like me, I've done the math. I don't know if my math's right, but I believe I'm one of the 500 fighters who will be getting over $100,000 from this.
Okay. And thank you for that. That's incredible insight. In March, when we found out about the initial settlement of $335 million, there were a lot of people who said, you were so close to going to trial, why settle? And then, there were some people who said, were you just fighting for money or were you fighting for contractual changes and whatnot? You've just explained that it's split into 2 and there's still the Johnson portion of this still to come. And of course, we then found out that Judge Boulware, in a somewhat surprise move, said he wasn't happy with the settlement and they went back to the drawing board, so to speak, and then we come to this conclusion of 375. What camp were you in back in March? Were you happy with the 335 or were you a little bit disappointed?
If I can use actually some statements from what Kramer said about this very question, because
is Kramer the lawyer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't pick him out of a lineup.
Okay.
But he was the guy that was up there talking to Judge Boulware. He had his back to me, so hard to see his face. But what he mentioned, right, was that they used the data from economists throughout the pretrial hearings, right? And we've heard estimates of up to 1.6 billion on the high end and around 800 million on the low end from the economist Hal Singer. And that could end up being, with damages, if it went to court trial and the plaintiffs won, that could be, like $6 billion that TKO would be on the hook for. Kramer mentioned that one of the reasons why they were happy with this money number is that they went by the data given by the economist, I believe, Andrew Zimbalist.
Yep.
And what he had said was he estimated $981 million in damages from December 2010 till December 2016. So a similar time frame to what was settled here. And that 981,000, if you do the math, Kramer said it was like something like 40% The 375 million would be something like 40%. It's a little bit under that, but essentially that falls in line with, you know, wage share in NBA, NHL, those sorts of organizations. So when I look at it from my perspective, from my career, right? If this went to trial, I don't know that the fighters ever get anything, because even if TKO Zuffa lost this, there's courts of appeals. It could go up. We just saw the DirecTV Sunday Ticket court case get struck down after the plaintiffs won. So in my mind, there was absolutely no guarantee that I would ever see a dime during my lifetime unless there was a settlement. So yeah, I guess I'm happy. And if I can also say one thing, Ariel, after saying that I'm happy with that settlement. Like if I look at my own career, I would say, yeah, based on the amount of work I put in, I could expect maybe $150,000 more. If we had won the settlement, like, sure, I would have taken $1 million, but the UFC didn't make $1 million off of me throughout the years. You know what I mean? So in one way, I'm happy with this $150,000 settlement for sure. And I want to make it quite clear, I have no skin in this game, right? The only thing that I'm concerned about is the fighters getting paid. I don't work with the plaintiffs. I don't work with the MMA FA, which Rob Macy is associated with. As a matter of fact, years ago, I'm pretty sure I got kicked out of a WhatsApp chat that they have because I was asking too many questions. So for anybody out there thinking like I have ulterior motives, absolutely not. I've been contacted already by a few fighters about this, and I would give them as much information as I can. I'm not an expert, unfortunately, on court cases. So, I would defer to somebody like Josh Gross, somebody who's really followed this, John Nash, somebody who's followed this more closely. But I can just tell you what I saw from a firsthand perspective in that courtroom.
By the way, just curious, when it comes to the settlement, how do they decide on a vote? Like, do they ask all 1,200 plus of you guys? Like, who ultimately decides that this is okay, we like this, and we're going to move forward from the fighter's perspective?
I believe in 30 days. After 30 days, there'll be another hearing, and then they will start sending out letters that will tell you how much you'll get paid, how you'll get paid, and you can dispute it there. So,
okay,
I believe before you would have maybe 90 days from maybe today's date to dispute this, to argue that perhaps you feel the lawyer fees are too much. And maybe Judge Boulware feels the lawyer fees are too much at the end of it. We're not over the finish line as far as fighters go, but we're inching there.
You mentioned fighters reaching out. I'm sure you wouldn't be too surprised. I've had a plethora of managers, fighters reach out to me and say, like, where do I get my money? How do I get my money? What do you know? And the truth is, I'm not an expert. You mentioned Josh. You mentioned John Nash. Eric McGracken has done a great job of covering this on social media as well. I do know that you sent out a website earlier today. You tweeted a website. Is that the best place for fighters to sign up and get their information out there? And if so, what is that website?
Yeah, I believe that would be the best course of action. I believe it's UFCClassActionLawsuit.com. I know for myself, I got email correspondence before this trial went down saying that I was a part of the class. So I know that they have my email. I know that they have my mailing address, and I believe that's all that you really need to provide to them. After the 30 days, you get your payment letter, and then I believe you'll have to you'll have to agree with the amount first. Maybe you could challenge it if they missed a bout or something, and then go from there.
Realistically, I know you're not an expert, but realistically, when do you think you could see money?
The UFC, based on what was said yesterday, the UFC is required to put the money into escrow by the end of June. So I believe the payment schedule will be set to start Q3 of this year. I don't know if it'll be, multiple lump sum payments. I don't know if we're going to get $50 a month for the rest of my life. I have no clue how it's going to work.
Okay. And as far as Johnson versus Zuffa, what is the timeline there? Because like, are we looking at another 10 years, or do you think this will be expedited?
I think it'll be expedited simply based on the fact that they have a lot of the information already. One of the things that they talked about yesterday before they settled the Kung Lee portion of the lawsuit was um, whether the both sides would have access to all of the information from Lee for the Johnson lawsuit. And the judge made it quite clear that he wasn't making a ruling on admissibility of anything, but that, of course, he thought that all of the information that they've already gathered should be available to both sides. And then it could be, either ruled relevant to to whatever's going on in Johnson or not on a case by case basis. But they already have a lot of the, I guess you could say, groundwork done. So I don't expect this to take years and years and years, but
You're right, right, right. Would you like to see contractual changes? Like, would you like to see more than just a check being cut?
yeah, of course, I think that the fighters, the more say they have in the sport, the better off for the long term. Um, but I don't know that, strictly having some wild open market is the best course of action. I mean, boxing still has its problems. You know, the UFC, for better or worse, has been the most successful at being a big time MMA promotion. And, if they were gone, I don't know what the landscape would look like. So I don't know that like the contract should be put in such a way that, takes all the power away from the promoters, but certainly there need to be concessions made. They can't just add things to contracts without, fighter input. And over the years, it's just been so restrictive.
Do you think we will see a union of some kind, an association in our lifetime?
Unfortunately, not.
Hmm.
I mean, you can just take a look at, like, I have fighters contacting me because
Right,
they don't trust the lawyers here.
right, right.
There's fighters who will talk. They'll say, oh, I don't know anything about this guy's situation, but maybe he should have done
Yeah.
something different with his money. Fighters at the very root of their person are confrontational, unfortunately. And I guess maybe I wasn't good enough to be at that level to hate everybody. And, now I just want to see everybody get paid. But I don't think that you're going to have enough people be able to come on board and come together, unfortunately.
By the way,
It's too individualistic of a sport.
to the best of your knowledge, has anyone opted out? I mean, as recently as yesterday, I saw Sam Alvey question it, but I saw the Twitter account Boshinia Depot say he hasn't opted out. So, have you
Yeah.
heard of anyone opting out?
No, I haven't heard of anybody opting out. I don't know why people are surprised that Sam Alvey is saying he doesn't understand how a court case went down. I mean, I wouldn't be looking at him for legal advice. So don't be surprised by that. But I haven't heard of anybody saying they're not going to take the money. I think Chael Sonnen said he's being forced to take his money. And, rightfully so.
Right, right, right. All right, so this is very interesting, and now we await the next steps. Is there anything that I mean, man, you've really summarized this. This is incredible insight and very valuable. I think I'm just going to send all the managers who hit me up about this interview when we're done. Is there anything that you think we missed?
No, actually, I mean, yeah, one of the most important parts actually was Judge Boulware said he had one question before he went through and agreed to the settlement, and that was whether the 400 or so fighters who had signed, I guess, waivers in the Johnson class since 2017, whether they would still be able to collect through the Lee class and also the Johnson class. And it was made quite apparent, was made clear by Kramer that those fighters, those 400 or so fighters who fought in both classes, will be able to collect from both classes. So that was
Wow.
actually a very important part of the lawsuit, especially to Judge Boulware. So
Yeah. By the way, speaking of Judge Boulware, in an interview recently, Dana White said that he went to school with him, that Lorenzo went to school with him, and he thought that he had an axe to grind. You seem to have your finger on the pulse of all of this. Did you get any sense that he was biased?
No, I thought, as somebody who is going to vote third party this year, so I have no allegiances. I thought he was very, very fair. He came off to me as somebody who was, you know, going by the law, but also understands, um, the social situations that we're in. And he mentioned that he had never in his, I can't remember how many, 20, 30 years, whatever it was, in the courts, he had never seen a number of depositions from members of a class at this point in a lawsuit ever, ever. And they gave a lot of credit to Rob Macy for doing that. So I just want to also mention that as well, because that undoubtedly played a huge part. There was a little bit of thought of whether, all of this information put out about guys like Shane Carwin, Vanderlei Silva, other fighters saying that they have health problems, whether maybe that would backfire and Judge Boulware would be like, wow, these guys deserve way more money than they're getting in this settlement. But it actually seemed to kind of, move him and push him towards accepting this settlement. And he seemed kind of happy to do so.
Those depositions have made big news. You're still active, and I just want to ask you before we go about your pro wrestling career, but overall, how is your body? How, like, do you have any similar issues as Shane, Vanderlei, and the other depositions that have been made public?
I mean, yeah, I have a lot of physical issues, but I can't tell you whether they're from MMA or from pro wrestling. I've actually had to take this month off from pro wrestling because I've been so beat up lately. And like this, I mean, if this goes through, it's really not coming at a better time for me. Hopefully a lot of other fighters can use this money to invest in their future. To some people, this is going to be like life-changing money. This isn't going to allow me to retire and not do anything physical. It's not going to allow me to retire from wrestling or the wrestling world. But hopefully it's going to let me, set myself up for the future. And, hopefully I can actually get out of the ring sooner than later, because, man, it's a young man's sport, Ariel, let me tell you.
Yeah. So you would, because
there's not enough Ostarine on the shelves.
Right.
In that ring.
You joke that you're unemployed, but I've seen you with Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, with MLW, some big time matches against big time opponents. That all being said, you are looking forward to the day that you can just sail off into the sunset. No more beating up your body.
That would be great. I don't trust myself to actually do that, though. In reality, you'll probably see me around doing something, in combat sports for the rest of my life.
Well, I appreciate you very much. Congratulations to you and the fighters. I hope that everyone is happy with this, and wish you guys all the best in concluding this, getting your money, and then let's see what happens with the Johnson case. This has been phenomenal. Thank you, Tom. I really do appreciate it. Well done. Hey, by the way, I think you might have a career in reporting. I mean, you broke it all down. You were on the scene. Think about it. I know you show up on Wrestling Observer and all that stuff, but you got it all down. So well done.
I appreciate it. Glad I could be of any service. And like I said, I've got no dog in this fight other than that I want the best for the fighters. So if you got any questions or I can answer anything, if you're a fighter, you're a manager, whatever, I'll do my best. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All the best to you. There he is, Filthy Tom Lawler, one of the good guys in the game, and he's been quite active on social media when it comes to this particular topic. And again, the website, if you are a fighter, if you are a manager, is ufcclassaction.com. Thanks for watching this video. Hey, before you go, do me a favor, hit that sub button, give us a thumbs up, hit the little bell thingy as well, leave us a nice comment or two. We appreciate you all very much.